should always believe what your child says if anything is happening to them. This is my first time talking about it, but when I was about 11 or 12, I moved to Dominican Republic with my biological mother. Now, when I did move back, I didn't move back with my mother. My grandmother never wanted me to live with my mom. She always said that my mom just wasn't a good person, and that a good mother wouldn't leave their kid when they're 3 months old, which is what she did with me. So for a while, I lived with my uncle and his wife and, their 3 kids. When I turned about 15, my mom, she wanted me to move to her house with her and my 2 siblings. So my uncle was like, that's okay, she's 15 now. My mom had this creepy, 50-year-old friend that would always go to her house. She was friends with her and friends with her husband, and they always would spend time together. Now, this creepy friend would have a weird obsession with me making him coffee. He would not drink anyone else's coffee if it wasn't mine, or anyone else's hot chocolate if it wasn't coming from me. So one day, I don't even know when it was, but my mom gave him my phone number. So I had this little kind of Nokia phone. It wasn't even a flip phone. It was just one of those. It had the screen and the buttons. That's it. It's called an Alcatel. If you're Dominican, you probably know what it is. So one day I wake up to a text from him and he's like, hey, I'm here with your mom sitting down. Can you make me some coffee? And I wasn't feeling very, I don't know. I was weirded out of why she would give him my phone number, your 15-year-old daughter. So whatever, I made him coffee and he came and got it to my mom's house because I'm I just woke up. If you want to come and get it, come and get it. And when he came and got it, he gave me this weird hug where you just feel very uncomfortable. And I told my mom I am feeling very uncomfortable with this person. Do you guys know what she said? She said, do you really think a man like him, he was a very rich man. He had a couple businesses, a couple of plantain fields. She's do you really think a man his age is going to go after a black 15-year-old? This is why I've mentioned in a couple of my videos that I don't have a relationship with my mom, not because of this specific thing, but the way she treated me. Okay, I'm running out of time. Go to part 2. So after that, I'm okay. So fast forward, it was the World Cup and her husband invited her creepy friend over to watch the World Cup. Every single day it was on, he would be there having lunch, eating with us. So one day I wake up, he's there. My mom's husband is on the grill cooking something. My mom is working because we have a family business that she takes care of. And he calls me over. Mind you, I'm still in my pajamas in Dominican Republic. I obviously wasn't wearing anything long. And he's come here, come sit on my lap. And I'm no. And I'm no, I have to do I have to do house chores. And he's it's fine, come sit on my lap. And I'm no, it's fine. And he's okay, can you make me some coffee then? And I make him the coffee and I bring him the coffee and he grabs me by the hand and tries to kiss me. Mind you, I'm 15 years old. So after that happened, how do I tell my mother that happened after I've already told her and she basically said, you're not good enough for him? So then it got to a point where I didn't even want to, be around my family if he was there because I was just so uncomfortable. And she would say, oh, don't pay attention to her. She's always in a bad mood. She's so samura, which in English means that's always quiet around people, blah blah blah. She's always said I'm samura, which it's kind of a slang word I want to say in Dominican Republic. So he would always text me you're so beautiful for a black girl, you're so exotic. He was from Spain, he wasn't Dominican. And he would be your lips look so beautiful, they look so soft, just so awkward. But till this day I never said anything to anyone. Because either way, if I did, no one was going to believe me. Just always believe your kid, because even if I showed my mom the text messages, she would still find a way to say that it was my fault and that I was throwing myself at him. time! Okay, so this one day I went to class only to find out that I had a French test. So I took my best friend to the bathroom so that way we could make a plan so I could miss the test and do it another time. After some practice, I went back to class, and before she handed out the test, I told her I felt sick and that I would like to go to the nurse. But she didn't buy it. So I turned around and I pretended to pass out. Yeah, you heard that right. Anyway, she jumped up from her seat and she ran down the hallway, and then she realized that she ran the wrong way, so she turned around and she ran the other way down the hall. Fast forward a few minutes later, and the nurse comes to the room. At that point, the nurse is checking on me, and then she takes me to the infirmary. So then at this point, I'm so confused because I didn't plan on making it this far. So they pricked me with needles to check my blood sugar, and they checked my blood pressure, and they realized that nothing was wrong with me. So then they decided that the best decision would be to, of course, call my dad. Now, I would have been fine with that if my dad wasn't a doctor, which I seem to have forgotten about completely. So then he came, and I thought my dad wasn't gonna fall for it until he was like, oh, you know what? She's probably just dehydrated because she never drinks any water. So I was able to go home after that. They ended up rescheduling my French test for another day. But I just want to add that this whole idea was a waste of time because I never even studied for the second test. So it's just embarrassing.
Am I wrong for making my ex a birthday cake even though his girlfriend told me she had already ordered one? I'm an amateur baker and I like to make cakes for people for their birthdays. My ex doesn't like sweet stuff, but our kids like helping me make a cake for him, so I normally make one for him anyway for their sakes. This year, his girlfriend planned a party for him, and she told me that she had already ordered him a cake, so I didn't need to make one. I told her that was fine, but when my daughter kept asking me when we would make her dad's cake and was upset when I said we wouldn't because she assumed I didn't like my ex and that's why I wouldn't make him one. Since the cake has always been more for the kids than for my ex, I decided to just make him a small one since it's not like he eats cake anyway, and I don't want my kids to think I dislike their dad. I told his girlfriend beforehand that I was going to make a small cake and she told me not to and that I couldn't bring it to the party. I told her I had to bring it to the party as that's when the kids would give him his gifts. I offered to come early and give it to him before the other guests arrived, and then they could put it away and nobody else would know about my cake, but she didn't agree with me and repeatedly told me not to bring it. I did take it with me in the end, and now she keeps complaining to mutual friends that I did it on purpose to ruin the party and calling me weird for making him a cake after I was told not to.
My husband, 27 male, and I, 25 female, have been married for 3 years. We don't have any kids together, but we had been talking about it and was planning to conceive in the next 5 years. We met through work and shared the same workplace up until around 2 years ago. He had a change in career path and I got promoted. 2 months ago, he had a work night out and I was invited to go with him. We had a meal and went to a nice bar afterwards in the city. During the meal, I noticed him looking at a very pretty woman who looked a bit younger than me. When we got home, I asked him about her and he said she was his assistant. I didn't suspect him of cheating because our relationship was perfect, and if either of us had a problem, we would bring it up and discuss it. Ever since the night out, he's been constantly away on business and I've been suspicious. I decided to ring his boss the day after he went away on business for a week. His boss told me he was working a few hours away in a big city and his assistant went with him. I messaged my sister and asked if she fancied a girls' weekend. And as soon as we got there, I decided to look at his assistant's Instagram. She posted a boomerang and tagged her hotel. After a lot of research, I found out that there were several bars surrounding the hotel, but I decided to go to the hotel bar itself. I explained to my sister the situation and she was fully supportive and was annoyed at my husband for going on business alone with his assistant. We stayed at the bar for a few hours and it got to about 2:40 in the morning. This is when he walked in with his assistant under his arm. He then kissed her, unaware that I was watching. My sister looked so angry and began to storm over. I then grabbed her and took her out of the hotel. We went home the next morning and I didn't know what to do. I wanted revenge, so I was going to message his family about what I saw. I called my friend who is a divorce lawyer and we're trying to sort something out. I decided the best person to message was his brother. He's super attractive and nice, and when I told him about it, he told me that I needed better than him and was basically slating my husband with him. He came around to the house and I'm not going to go into detail, but one thing led to another. Now I'm planning to divorce my husband for his brother. Part 2. I'm leaving my husband for his brother. A lot of people are saying I ruined their relationship, which isn't true whatsoever. My husband and his brother are not close and have never been. They grew up in 2 different households. My husband has 2 brothers, so his older brother and his younger brother both live with their dad, whilst my husband lived with his grandma. You guys are also saying that I'm using his brother in my emotional state. Me and his brother have discussed what we want, and if we end up catching feelings and in a relationship, so be it. The third thing I want to point out is that until the divorce is finalized, I'm moving in with my mother. I'm not going to tell him that I'm moving out. On Thursday night, I put 2 envelopes on the counter. One of the divorce papers, the other of hotel pictures, and I left a bottle of wine for him. I then packed my stuff, and up until Friday night, it was really peaceful. However, when he got home, my phone started blowing up. I was receiving messages from my husband and his mom calling me a bitch and weak. He rang me and I wasn't answering, so he left a voicemail saying I was a weak slag who can't handle my husband going out and exercising. I turned my phone off, and it's really important to know that I was home alone as my mom and sister were both at work. I started hearing pounding on the door and I knew it was him. He was thudding his shoulder all up against the door and I felt sick. I called the police and told them that my crazy ex-husband was trying to break in. By the time they got here, he had already left, and I'm going to file a restraining order. I just can't believe this all happened in one night. I sent his brother around to the house to collect a few things that I had forgotten when my husband wasn't in this morning, and he's just got back. Apparently, everything was smashed and there was beer cans everywhere. I'm so glad that I've gotten out of this horrible relationship.